And I remember as I was hiding in my crush's closet, out of nowhere, I ended up seeing her walk into her room, and I was freaking out, sitting there in the closet, trying not to make a single sound. And at that moment, I realized I was trapped in my own crush's closet. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name's Bubba, and welcome back to another insane but embarrassing story. So this story all takes place back when I was in middle school, and I was in grade 7. Now, grade 7 for me was actually pretty interesting. I'm not gonna lie, like, I was a really basic kid, and honestly, I was a helpless romantic. I remember all throughout my middle school years, actually, funny enough, I only had one girl that I had a major crush on. And it was pretty well known throughout the guys in my school that I had a crush on this girl. But for her, I guess she was pretty oblivious. But I remember one day when I entered inside my school, I was sitting down writing in my journal as I was heading to class. If you guys don't know, back when I was in middle school, I had a journal that I basically wrote everything in. And yes, it was a journal, not a diary. I know how many people can get that confused, so trust me on this, it was just a journal. And basically with this journal, I remember as I was writing down in it, my buddy ends up walking up to me saying, "Yo, Bubba, what are you writing?" "Oh, nothing, don't worry about it." When in reality, I was actually writing about my crush. And I remember this wasn't the first time I wrote about my crush in my journal, and my buddy actually knows that I had a journal, and he always would make fun of me about writing in it, because let's be real here, he would always call it a diary. Anyways, I remember as he was asking me questions about the journal, he ended up grabbing it out of my hand, and he ended up saying, "Bubba, what? Are you writing about your crush again?" "Dude, give it back," is what I told him, and he ended up giving it back to me. I remember he kept telling me how I should just tell her the truth and just tell her that I like this girl, but honestly, I had no confidence whatsoever back when I was in grade 7 to actually go do that. And when we entered inside the classroom, we ended up all sitting down, and that's when class started. I remember even seeing my crush walk into the classroom when class started, and honestly, I couldn't get my eyes off her. If anything, like I said earlier, I was a helpless romantic, so every time I saw her, it was the only thing I could think about. That probably makes sense why my grades weren't so good, but it is what it is. Anyways, when class was about to end, I remember I quickly had to go to the bathroom, so I got up and left, and as I left, I remember when I got back from going to the bathroom, I ended up just packing my things and going home. And when I got home, I noticed the one thing that wasn't in my bag, and this thing was the most important thing in my life at the time, and that was my journal. For some reason, it wasn't there, and the last place I remember putting it was in my desk at school. So in my mind, I thought, okay, you know, it probably is at school. I can just go tomorrow, pick it up, and act like nothing happened. And I remember part of me, for some reason, just had a bad gut feeling. Like, you know that feeling when you get butterflies in your stomach that something bad's about to happen? Well, I had that feeling, but I tried my best to ignore it. And the next day, when I went to school early to go to my desk, I realized that my journal wasn't there. I was super confused on why, and I remember looking all over my desk and even taking everything out of my desk to see if I could find it, but it wasn't there. At that moment, I started to panic because I started thinking about if someone took my journal and they have access to all my crazy thoughts and all my secrets in life almost. So as I was panicking inside the classroom, class ended up starting and the bell rang, and everyone started to come into the classroom, seeing me totally empty out my desk and making a giant mess. It got to the point where my friend that, you know, I hung out with yesterday, the day before, he ended up walking up to me saying, "Bubba, why are you making a mess, bro? What happened?" "Dude, I can't find it." "Find what?" "My journal, bro. Like, I can't find it anywhere." "Wait, what? You didn't get it back?" "What do you mean get it back?" And that's when I realized my friend ended up telling me that he put my journal inside my crush's backpack, so it would be like a way for me to confess my feelings to her. I remember at that moment, I started to panic. I started to freak out, and I even almost ended up yelling at him. But obviously, before I did that, though, my crush ended up walking in, and I knew I had to figure out where my crush put my journal. I ended up asking my friend as well where he put my journal, and he said he put it in her backpack, so I didn't think too much of it. And that whole day, I remember I was so nervous and freaking out inside about my journal being with my crush that I had no confidence whatsoever to go up to my crush and even ask her about it. For some reason, ever since I was a kid, and even now, I always had like a nervousness of like walking up to people and asking them for things. So I remember I always like kind of like held back, and even at lunchtime when I was about to walk up to her, I got super nervous because, well, she was my crush and I had no way to walk up to her. Anyways, one thing led to another, and the school day finally ended. And me, I just knew inside that I was worried because, well, since I didn't walk up to her, she was gonna go home and I wasn't gonna have my journal. So I remember I made up a plan to basically follow my crush after school and follow her home, which sounds really creepy, but to be honest, I was a kid back then, so I didn't really have that mindset, I guess, that it would be weird to do that. But I remember I ended up following her home, and when I saw and figured out where she lived, I ended up hiding and waiting until she got inside. And at that moment, I knew that I had to break into my crush's house and basically grab my journal. If you guys are wondering why I just didn't wait the next day at school, well, it was a Friday, so there was no possible way that school was going to be on the weekend, and there was no possible way for me to actually talk to her since I was so nervous. So I remember as time ended up going by, I waited like extra 20 minutes outside her place, and that's when I decided to break into her house. If you guys are wondering how I broke in, well, I ended up looking around the house and ended up figuring out which one was her window, and I ended up opening her window. For some reason, the house back where she lived at was really easy to open the windows for, so I ended up opening the window and I snuck inside her bedroom. When I got inside, I was so scared. Like, Like, you have no idea. It is not actually easy to break and enter into someone's place. And no, do not try it. This is a warning, okay? I was a dumb kid back then. Don't do what I do in these stories. But anyways, as I was in her room, I knew that I had to get my journal, so I ended up looking around. I started looking, you know, inside her cabinet to looking inside her closet. And when I opened her closet, I saw her backpack. And that's when I grabbed her backpack and opened it, and I finally found my journal. I guess my crush never opens her backpack because knowing that I was in there for almost 2 days is totally insane. But I ended up grabbing my journal, but right as I grab it out of her bag, I ended up hearing noises of someone entering her bedroom, and I thought it was my crush. So I ended up jumping inside my crush's closet, and I sat in there trying not to breathe. My crush ended up walking in and getting changed, and honestly, me sitting in her closet, I was totally terrified. And knowing that she was right in front of me really wasn't a good idea. Like, there was no way I was gonna just come out of her closet and see her inside her own place without her knowing that I was there in the first place. Like, I didn't want my crush to know I broke into her place, okay? Like, I really did not know what to do here. So me, as I was freaking out, panicking, sitting in her closet, I remember I sat and waited inside her closet until she would leave her bedroom so I can have the golden opportunity to leave her place. But for some reason, no matter what, my crush just would not leave her room. No joke, she went from sleeping on her bed to sitting on her desk doing homework and would just be on her laptop listening to music and watching One Direction videos. Yeah, I don't know. My crush did a lot of things that day that I never thought she would ever do. But honestly, as I was sitting in her closet, I'm not joking, I ended up getting really hungry and super tired, to the point where I was actually considering passing out in her closet and sleeping in there for the night. But luckily, I ended up hearing my crush's mom calling her name, and that was the one time she ended up leaving her room. And knowing that this was my only opportunity to leave her room, I ended up getting out of her closet, and I ended up opening the window as fast as I could and leaving. But right before I could close the window, as I was outside, my crush ended up walking into her room, and instead of closing it, I just sprinted away as fast as I could with my journal. I ended up running home, and I remember at the time when I got home, it was like, I want to say around 11:30 at night. And I remember when I got home, my mom ends up looking at me super upset saying, "Baba, where are you? Where'd you go?" Sorry, mom, I was hanging out with friends." "What do you mean, Baba? You don't have friends." "Thanks, mom, thanks." And I remember I ended up just going downstairs and writing in my journal this exact crazy story that happened to me. Honestly, to this day, I'm still surprised that my crush never ended up finding my journal. And the next day afterwards, trust me, I ended up yelling at my friend for a good hour at lunchtime just because of his crazy idea for confessing my love to my crush that way. But honestly, what would you guys do in my situation? Would you guys break into your crush's house? Because if you guys would, then fall for more embarrassing stories just like this one. Peace out, guys.